So now we've created an account, the first thing we need to do is start editing. First thing we'll need to do is to select a theme. Under Portfolio, I'm going to select the first option, Modus Operandi. It's just the easiest one to start with. You can choose any theme that you feel is appropriate. Now I've selected the theme, I can click Start Editing, because actually we're going to be changing the structure of this theme to fit our digital portfolio. On clicking Start Editing, Weebly will start creating your site. There's a few things we'll need to do before we start. The first is to create a website domain. The first option, use a subdomain of Weebly, is free. All this means is whatever you call your website or your e-portfolio, it'll be suffixed by weebly.com. That doesn't matter to me, so I'm going to select the name of my portfolio. That's going to be my Sheffield portfolio. Obviously you can call it whatever you want, but consider something professional because this will be going out to employers. Weebly then checks to make sure that your domain is available, and you'll get a big tick if it's available. If somebody else has used that name, you'll get a cross, which indicates you'll need to think of another name for your site. Once you've selected your name, click Continue. And that's that subdomain registered. Now, the content of your portfolio will be very much up to you. You want to showcase your best work. You'll also want to be creating an area where your tutor will be able to look at your weekly tasks and provide some comment. So this screencast will show you how to set up the basic structure of your Weebly site, but then it will be down to you to select appropriate content to put into it. So what do we want the portfolio to end up looking like? Well, this is an example of what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a digital portfolio that's got a section about me. We want a section called Portfolio that allows you to showcase your best pieces of work. And we also want to create a section called Weekly Workbook, which is where you're going to upload your weekly tasks to demonstrate to your tutor what you've learned during that week. This structure is very simple to create and is just a number of pages that have been formatted in a particular way. So this is a drop-down menu with separate pages that sit underneath it, as is the Weekly Workbook. And the About Me page, this one displayed here, is a very simple page with a section of text and a contact form with some images. So back to our newly created site. First thing I'm going to do is just change the title. So I'm going to do that by clicking on Modus Operandi, selecting all of the text and replacing it with the title of my portfolio, which is just my Sheffield portfolio. And then I'm going to click away from that box, and that's updated it. The next thing we want to do is change the title of these and actually create some pages. So what we can do is we can use the pages that already exist here and we can edit them directly. We do this by going into the main menu at the top and selecting Pages. You can see the pages are displayed here and are the pages that are across the top here as tabs. So the first page is called Home. I'm actually going to change that and rename it to About Me. It dynamically saves, so I don't need to save it anywhere. You can see after a couple of seconds it updates it actually within the main area of the web page. I'm now going to select the About page. Again, I'm going to click on About, but instead of editing just the name of this page, I'm actually going to delete it because we're going to create a different sort of page. So just click Delete and confirm you want to delete the page. You'll notice that that page has now disappeared. I'm going to do exactly the same with the Contact page. So I'm going to click Contact and Delete. And now that Contact page has disappeared. The reason I've deleted those two pages is that we're going to create a different type of page. If I return back to the example portfolio, you'll notice that this is a drop-down menu, as is the Weekly Workbook. This is a different sort of page we need to create in our portfolio. So I'm going to go back to our portfolio here and click the plus button next to pages. You'll notice there are different sorts of pages you can add here. In order to add a drop down, I'm going to select the non-clickable menu option. I'm going to rename it Portfolio, and I'm going to click away, and in a few seconds it's renamed it in the main content. I'm going to click Done, and that's saved it. I'm going to do exactly the same thing now to create the weekly workbook page. And I'm going to click Done, and there we have it. It's created it in the main page. The next thing we're going to do is add a bit of structure to this portfolio. If I hover over these two menu items, you can see that there isn't a drop down yet, and that's because we haven't got any additional pages over on this side. So I'm going to create what's called a placeholder. This will be blank pages that you can add content to later. So I'm going to click the plus button next to pages again, and this time I'm going to select a standard page. I'm just going to give these generic titles for the time being, so I'm going to call this Map 1, and I'm going to click Done. Now, Map 1 in the menu here automatically drops right below this menu, and you can see that it attaches itself to the main area as another top level link. But actually what I want it to do is I want to sit Map 1 underneath Portfolio. In order to do that, in the left menu, I drag the Map 1 and I pop it underneath Portfolio with a slight indent to the right. Once I drop it here, it's now embedded underneath Portfolio. And I can just double check that by hovering over Portfolio in the main area, and I can see Map 1 is there. If I click on Map 1, it loads a blank page, and here's the content that I'll put my showcase Map 1 into. Repeat that step for the 5 or 6 maps that you want to appear under the portfolio. Okay, so here's one I made earlier. You'll see I've now created 5 separate pages that sit under Portfolio and appear in this drop down. And on the left hand side you can see how I've done that by creating another level down underneath Portfolio. We're going to do exactly the same for the weekly workbook. So I'm going to create a new page, and I'm going to call this Week 1 and click Done. And I'm going to grab Week 1 in the left menu and move it slightly to the right hand side so it becomes embedded under the weekly workbook. You'll want to repeat this step for all 12 weeks of teaching, so just make sure that you've got 12 weeks here. Now you don't have to do this all in one go. If you prefer, on a weekly basis, you can create a new week. You just repeat this process, which can be done at any time. So there we have it, our basic structure to our portfolio. We've got an About Me page. At the moment we've got no content, but all we're interested in is the structure. We can come to the content later. We've got a portfolio drop-down menu, which will have our showcase 5 maps all set up. And we also have a weekly workbook drop-down with our weeks set up in order that our tutor can have a look at the work that we're presenting to them. Now, under the weekly workbook, we want our tutor to be able to add some comments. So what we need to do is add a new app to our Weebly account, which will allow our tutor to add those comments. What we need to do is go up to the Apps menu at the top. In the search box, type in Comments, because this is the function that we're looking for, that the app can handle. Choose the second one that's called Comments Plus by clicking on it, and then click Add, which will add this free app to your account. You'll need to connect your Weebly account with the Comments app, which will take a couple of seconds. Authorize it by clicking Connect again. And Weebly will attach the Comments application to our Weebly account. And you'll be able to see it by scrolling down the left-hand menu on looking at the installed app at the bottom. Now we only want to put comments for the minute onto the weekly workbook. And we want to add a comments box onto each separate page for the week so that our tutor can comment on our work as we do it. All we do is grab the Comments app, and in the box underneath that says drag elements here, drop it into this area. The comments editor will appear. Don't worry about the information that appears down here. You don't need to make any changes to that at all. You can just close the comments editor box and you can see the comments box will appear underneath some content. You'll want to repeat that step for all of your weekly workbook pages in order that the tutor can comment on each week's work. Now at the moment, all elements of our portfolio are visible. However, at some point you might want to make the weekly workbook section hidden so that you can share your portfolio with employers. What you need to do is click on the Pages section and under Weekly Workbook, select Hide in Navigation. Now if I click this box, what you'll see happen in the main area here is that Weekly Workbook disappears. Now the URL for the weekly workbook will still exist. So you can still continue to work on the weekly workbook and send it through, and your tutor will still be able to access the contents of the weekly workbook. However, if you want to then share your workbook with an employer, it hides this area from the navigation, so they'll never be able to see that section. So that's quite a useful feature. So with a very basic structure in place for our digital portfolio, the very last thing to do to ensure all your changes are saved is to publish your digital portfolio. So in the top right hand corner, click on the blue Publish button. It'll ask whether you want to use the subdomain of Weebly, which we entered before, which is all fine, then click Continue. The first time you do this, it might take some time if you've done a lot of work, but once the website's published, you'll get a direct URL that you can then use and you can then share through various social media channels, or you can just click on the link to see what your website looks like from an external point of view. So I'm going to click on the link just to check my portfolio looks as expected. With the basic structure now in place, there's lots more we can add to our portfolio to make it really customizable. Play with the colours, maybe change the size of the font, and you can also make some edits to the basic content if you like. But in order to embed your maps into your ePortfolio, it'll take a little bit of work using some HTML code that we'll cover in the next screencast. But for now, you've got a basic structure to your digital portfolio that we can share with employers.